Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This will be a PowerPoint on colonial mercantilism, a step towards the American Revolution. You're going to want to have your worksheets out in front of you, as you'll need these as we go through the PowerPoint. Okay, first off, it might be a bit hard to see, but I'm going to go ahead and circle it in case you need to reference this at another time. Right where the pointer's at, the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see a number. So as we go through the video, this is the slide number that we're on. So when you look on your worksheet, you can see it'll say slide number 2, slide number 3. This is how you find out what slide we're on during this video. Okay, why do countries want colonies? The money a colony makes goes to the mother country. For example, most of the money that the colony of Georgia makes from growing and selling tobacco goes to England, its home country. Thus, Georgia produces money for England. This is not a concept only for the English. Spain had colonies. France had colonies. This is a global institution of mercantilism. So again, just to remind you, we just finished slide 2. That's you'd want to go ahead and write your answer in there and press pause. Okay, from this chart here, you can see that mercantilism. Again, European leaders of the time believed that the purpose of colonies was to benefit the home country. This belief was part of the economic theory known as mercantilism. According to this theory, a nation became strong by building up its gold and silver supply. One way to do this was to take gold and silver from colonies and send it to the royal treasury. Well, as we found out that the colonies didn't have much gold and silver, so they needed to come up with other resources. If you look at the chart here, this is a good way of explaining it. Again, here's the home country. This could be Spain, it could be England. In this case, let's just focus on England. So again, and then this bubble here, or circle, these are the colonies, the 13 colonies. And again, they can only trade with the home country. Well, the colonies are going to send over to England raw materials such as gold, which there wasn't much of, cotton, timber, whereas the home country, again, is going to take these products and create manufactured goods such as clothing and furniture and then sell them back to the colonies. So this whole process is called mercantilism. Again, the colonies would sell the raw materials for pennies on the dollar. Remember, there was no dollar back then. England used a different monetary amount. We'll get to that later in the year. But just for your understanding, pennies on the dollar is not a good deal. However, the colonists still made money, but England made a lot of money. So go ahead and answer questions for slide 3 on your worksheet. There's 3 questions. Okay, mercantilism. Beginning around 1650, the British government pursued a policy of mercantilism in international trade. You'll want to go ahead and write down for slide number 4. What is mercantilism? Again, England followed this theory with the 13 colonies. Mercantilism is an economic theory that states a nation becomes stronger by keeping strict control over its trade. The key word there is strict. It also states that a nation should have more exports than imports. So again, for slide 5, pause and go ahead and write down the definition of mercantilism. To achieve this balance of trade, the English passed laws exclusively benefiting the British economy. Exclusively meant, the materials that came from the colonies would benefit only England. These laws created a trade system whereby Americans provided raw goods to Britain, and Britain used the raw goods to produce manufactured goods that were sold in European markets and back to the colonies. So these things such as cotton, tobacco, lumber, they weren't given just to England. Well, they were given to England, but then England made products, clothing, furniture. They sold the tobacco not only back to the colonists in finished product, but they sold it to Spain and France and other nations. So go ahead and fill the information in for slide 6 and pause the video. At this point, for slide number 7, you're going to want to visit this website to learn more about economic interdependence. there's a few paragraphs that you're going to want to read. When you're finished reading that or scanning it over, go ahead and write down your information for slide 7. There are 2 questions there. As suppliers of raw goods only, the colonies could not compete with Britain in manufacturing. English ships and merchants were always favored, excluding other countries from sharing in the British Empire's wealth. What are imports and exports? Exports are goods that are sent to market outside of a country or colony. Exports earn you money. Imports, these are goods brought into a country. Imports require that you spend money. For slide 9, there's a chart on your worksheet. You're going to need to fill that information in. So pause the video now. So in the theory of mercantilism, why do you want to have more exports than imports? If you export more than you spend, that's import, then you will be left with a profit. So again, you want to be able to export more than you spend. Then again, you'll be left with a profit in the end, and that's the goal for a nation. Slide number 10, you'll need to write down the information. Increasing control over the colonies. As the colonies began to be more successful and profitable, once we got past Jamestown and half of everybody died the first couple winters, England began to increase control over the colonies. Again, the colonists, they got their feet stabilized. Their business was becoming prosperous. England didn't want them to see the colonists trade with other nations. They wanted that strict control. They wanted to be as financially prosperous as they could. The English began to enact stronger controls over the Americans. The first major act which was placed over the colonists was the Navigation Acts. So that's slide number 11. Go ahead and fill that in. The Navigation Acts. Between 1651 and 1673, the English Parliament would be like our Congress. Those are the lawmakers. By the way, there were no representatives from the American colonies. There were none. So nobody in the colonies got to stand up in Parliament and say, hey, we don't agree, or we need to lessen the impact of this law. There was nobody to do that. But again, 4 navigation acts meant to ensure the proper mercantilist trade balance. So these acts were passed. Simply put, the colonists are there to benefit England, and that's the end of it. Doesn't sound very negotiable, but again, that's the theory of mercantilism. Go ahead and watch the video about the Navigation Acts. It's about 5 minutes. So go ahead and pause here and watch the video. The Navigation Acts, again, there are 4 parts to them, and I think by not only reading about it, but also watching the video, I think you'll be able to get it after this. So watch the video, and slides 14 to 16, you're going to want to pay close attention after you're done with the video to be able to fully understand the Navigation Acts. Again, the Navigation Act stated the following. Only English or English colonial ships could carry cargo between imperial ports or British ports. So you had to only use English colonial ships. Certain goods, remember not all goods, but certain goods such as tobacco, rice, and furs could not be shipped to foreign nations, that would be like Spain or France, except through England or Scotland. So your ship had to leave the colonies, go all the way to and enter a port at England or Scotland. The English Parliament would, quote, pay bounties to Americans who produced certain raw goods while raising protectionist tariffs on the same goods produced in other nations. Again, a bounty would be an extra amount of money if you would produce goods that were highly demanded, whereas England would pass a protectionist tariff. That's a tax on that same good in other nations. So simply put, England wouldn't take tobacco from Spain, and if people in England wanted to purchase tobacco from Spain, there would be a very, very heavy tax on it. Okay, so it would simply be cheaper to buy tobacco from England, and England got their tobacco from the colonies. So they're kind of forcing, the people even in England to purchase only from only from the colonies. And then finally, Americans could not compete with English manufacturers in large-scale manufacturing. And by manufacturing, we're talking clothing, we're talking, wood products. Again, you had colonial manufacturers, but not at all like they did and they had in England. Okay, what this really meant, I realize these can be confusing. This will kind of break down what I just said a little bit more and in worded print. So at this point, we're working on slides 14 to 16. If you need to go ahead and write or read this information again, that's fine. But again, we're on slide 15 here. That kind of breaks it down, the first two navigation acts. And then finally, the second navigation acts, I kind of went and expounded a little bit more about what that meant. So pause it, the video and complete slides 14 to 16 on the worksheet. The navigation acts severely restricted colonial trade, and again, that benefited England. Why these navigation acts were they enforced? England developed a policy of salutary neglect toward the colonies, which meant that the trade laws that most hurt the colonial economy were not enforced. Okay, so again, we're on slide 18 now. Go back and write for 17 down. But again, salutary neglect toward the colonies, again, this meant that trade laws that most hurt them were not enforced. Simply put, England turned a blind eye. They had these things on the books, in other words, laws that prohibit them from trading. But basically, as long as you pretty much traded your tobacco to England, your rice, England they looked over a lot of other violations. Generally, that's a bad policy because you're teaching people that you don't have to follow the law, or you only should have to follow the law with the main things. Again, this is slide number 18 on your handout. Why were the acts not enforced? With the prospect of war against the French looming, the British employed salutary neglect to maintain the colonists' loyalty. So again, when it all came down to it, and this is also slide 18, 19. Again, on your worksheet, why did England use salutary neglect with the colonies? Well, if they were too harsh, then the colonists probably would have smuggled everything and traded illegally with everything. But in this case, there's problems with France. We're going to find in a short while, we'll study the French and Indian War. It's called that because England fought the French and the Indians. This will be a war in North America, in our backyard. And England needed the colonists. England needed the colonists to be in their corner. So they figure, well, we'll be strict with trade, but not ultra strict, if that makes any sense. Okay, triangular trade. British mercantilism manifested itself in the form of the triangular trade. Trade routes linked the American colonies. So again, if you look over here where the pointer's at, again, you've got the American colonies, the West Indies, which are down here, Africa over here, and in Europe or England. So you had all these variety of trade routes. This is called triangular trade, and it focuses mainly on slavery. New England rum was shipped to Africa and traded for slaves, which were brought to the West Indies and traded for sugar and molasses, which went back to New England. Other raw goods were shipped from the colonies to England, where they were swapped for a cargo of manufactured goods. At this point, go ahead and visit the site below. You're going to see a number of trade routes, and we're on slide number 22. If you look at your worksheet, slides 22 to 24 talks about specific examples of triangular trade, and you're going to see a number of graphs. I think that you'll get that this talks about economic interdependence. Nobody produces all of their own goods, and everybody's fine. You need products from another nation, another region, and this really fueled slavery, not only in the West Indies but also in the colonies. So go ahead and watch this or look at these graphs, and when you feel comfortable, go ahead and answer on your worksheet where it says slides 22 to 24. Again, slide 25, you'll see, again, just some various trade routes. Again, some other maps. And at this point, if I can just point out, again, slaves were coming solely from Africa. Just like we learned earlier, again, slavery is race-based, meaning slaves are solely coming from Africa. Slaves are not Spanish. Slaves are not French. Slaves are coming solely from Africa. And again, you could see that when we follow this whole trade route, slaves leave Africa, okay? Again, they go to the West Indies, and from the Indies, you have slaves, they go to North America. Again, on the other hand, North America, they're sending back to Africa. This is a way to get slaves. If you look at this over here, in North America, rum, iron, gunpowder, cloth, tools are being sent to Africa. So again, everybody's benefiting. Again, products are leaving North America, such as lumber, furs. We already know that. They go to England. England sends back manufactured goods. We know that. England sends other things to Africa, guns, iron, beer, even cloth. But again, this is all these different trade routes, and this is, again, fueling the desire for slavery because so much money is being made. Okay, slide 25, you're going to want to look at the pros for New England and the cons for the southern colonies. Mercantilism and the triangular trade proved quite profitable for New England tradesmen and shipbuilders. But in the southern colonies, where the Navigation Acts vastly lowered tobacco prices, the economy suffered. Colonists obviously hated the Navigation Acts, therefore they violated them by sneaking around and trading with other countries. An example would be France. These colonists would then bribe the customs officers to look past their violations. The customs officers would be British officials, and they would take a paycheck. They would pretend they didn't see anything. So there was a lot of corruption that was going on during this time period as well. So go ahead and answer number 26. Mercantilism and the triangular trade increased the slave trade. The triangular trade also spurred a rise in the slave population and increased the merchant population, forming a class of wealthy elites that dominated trade and politics throughout the colonies. So certain groups of people are going to make an incredible amount of money, whereas other people, won't. And again, when you include so many slaves that are coming into the world, slaves literally would be at the bottom of the social structure. Native Americans perhaps might be one above slaves, but you're having this vastly different group of people that will, live in the colonies. So again, the question for number 27, who were the wealthy elites in colonial society? Doesn't really say it here, but go ahead and take a few guesses to who you think were the wealthy of the wealthy. Okay, last slide. Trade expands to America. Along with the voluntary immigration of Europeans to the Americas, thousands of new Africans were forced to move to the, quote, New World as slaves. African slavery in the New World began as early as the 1600s, literally at Jamestown, and lasted until emancipation in the mid-1800s. So again, the Civil War finally caused slavery to be abolished, but it took an incredible, in a very, very difficult legislative reaches to get slavery to finally be abolished. And you might well say that slavery was one of the issues of the Civil War. Okay, thanks for listening, and make sure that you go back and fill in the answers on your worksheet. Feel free to reference the PowerPoint if needed.